Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and if you weren't aware, the demo for Balan Wonderworld is now available on the Nintendo eShop as well as other platforms. I've had a bit of a go with it, and so has someone else. Say hello, someone else.
Hi, it's me, John from Nintendo Life. I am a big fan of Yuji Naka. I've loved most of his Sonic games, loved ChuChu Rocket, loved Puyo Puyo Fever. This is something else.
Isn't it just? Well, first of all, I'd like to say, how long have you played it, John? I think we played a similar amount. I've done about 90 minutes of this game.
I'd say I'm a bit closer to an hour, so you've had a bit more experience, but I feel like you get an impression on this game very quickly.
You do. First of all, what do you like about the game, John?
The music? The music's quite nice, and also the CG cinematics, they're also quite nice too. There's not much else. I like that when you pick up crystals, it sounds like going through a ring in Nights. I like that.
I kind of like Balan's design.
Yeah, it's very much in the vein of Sonic and Billy Hatcher, where it feels like a human version of Sonic.
It really does. I mean, I even tweeted Sonic the Hedge Boy, and with a picture of the character, and people seem to get it immediately. Somebody responded with Sonic the Hedge Fund, which I thought was very amusing given the character. That was at Hipkiss Design, just, credit where credit's due. That's going to age terribly, but even so. So, this game... John, what's wrong with the game?
Well, I think my first impression was I noticed whenever the camera cuts, your character T-poses, and this also goes for the boss. So there's this big boss that you fight, and there's one camera cut, and it looks so strange. Every single cut there's a T-pose. So technically, it's a bit of a mess, but I don't even want to address the technical side just yet. Just the mechanics, just the platforming mechanics feel dreadful. I don't think I've played a platformer that just feels this sluggish and stiff in years. Your run speed is so slow, and there's no run button. And basically every button is jump, and when you press any of those buttons, it feels dreadful. It's the most stilted jump I've had in a long time.
Horrible. It's just absolutely... It's borderline... I know this sounds like an exaggeration, but coming from playing anything, I'm going to use Super Mario Odyssey as an example, just because that is, it's a great 3D platformer. But playing this, it's just... It's not an exaggeration to say it is painful. It is uncomfortable to play because it is just so stiff, and the jumping, the arc is so sort of... I want to say it's quite steep. Sort of you go up quite far, quite high, but you don't go sort of forward very far at all. You don't have a lot of horizontal movement. It's mostly vertical. And it's just... It happens in an instant. But it's just kind of stiff, and the animation doesn't... Oh, my brain is overflowing with complaints about this game. And I actually feel bad, because it's not often that we get to talk about a game and say that it's bad. But this game is just bad, isn't it?
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I've immense respect for Yuji Naka. Even games like Rodea the Sky Soldier, I really liked. I think there's a lot of ambition in there. And most Sonic games I like. Even Sonic Forces, I think, is very flawed, but the game itself, it at least functions. It's at least a functioning Sonic game. This feels like it's being held together by string and glue.
It really does. I mean, no doubt the people watching, you will have already garnered a lot of our initial impressions just from seeing the gameplay, because the gameplay really does speak for itself. When it was initially revealed, it looked rough, it looked stiff and everything, but my initial thought was, well, it's only just been announced, these early builds can often be a little bit rough. I'm sure they'll smooth it out. It's exactly the same, and what's more, it runs terribly. I've noticed every single time enemies spawn, it drops about half a second of frames. and it's not even like the game pauses and then it comes in. The game continues to run, it just doesn't display anything. And it's hugely jarring. It runs at 30 frames a second and it's not consistent in the slightest. The first level you go into, it has like this big opening sort of in-engine animation sort of cutscene type thing, and it runs appallingly, and there's this giant farmer staring at you, which makes me feel extremely uncomfortable.
I was just very confused when you go into the first level and there's that animal just dancing in the background, and you approach it. You don't know what it is at this point. You approach it and it disappears. And every NPC works like that. If you get near them, they cease to exist.
I just don't even know where to begin with the laundry list of design flaws, and like I don't understand why the animals are always dancing. The NPCs are always dancing, and it's just some very obviously sort of like low accuracy mocap going on, and they all seem to be rigged the same, which means that they're often clipping into themselves. And oh, good lord, there's this section in the first world. I don't want to say the first level, but the first world where you get it's a costume where you stretch up, and it's a plant, and it's like, that's suspiciously familiar, because it is.
I've seen that somewhere before.
It's basically a carbon copy, and not a good one, of the I can't remember what it's called, but what everyone calls the onion from Super Mario Odyssey. It's exactly the same principle. But you know how with that sort of thing, you know, sort of, it felt natural, and you stretched and you jumped, and there was a great feeling of momentum. None of that. There is no great feeling of momentum in this game whatsoever. And what's worse, I think, and this is something that has been really irritating me ever since I discovered it, all costumes in the game have only one function each. And what that means is, if you have a costume that has a function that's like an attack, you literally cannot jump. You can't jump.
It's so bizarre. And further to that too, the dragon costume that you put on, using that, you're meant to hold down the Y button to attack and blow some fire. And when you do that, your model just freezes. There's barely any animation. Your model basically freezes and fire comes out of it. Nothing has any feedback in this game. And that even goes towards the jumps as well. Like some costumes, there's one where you kind of flutter around when you jump. And it just doesn't feel good. Nothing feels good. And a lot of these costumes just kind of hinder your jumps as well.
Yeah, I can't get past the bizarre mentality that, I get it, you want to spread out, sort of the costumes, and they're basically power-ups. Absolutely, that's a tried and true technique, but to actually eliminate the ability to jump in a 3D platform, and it's not even like it's a rare thing. There are so many different costumes that will just mean that you cannot jump. And yeah, you can change costumes on the fly. You can have 3 at any one time. And so I suppose it would be maybe, a little bit more acceptable. But changing costumes, I'm pretty sure it takes over a second in order to do that. There's a really sort of crappy spinning animation, and it just completely upsets the flow.
It does. There's a lot of ideas in here, and I do admire some of the ambition, but nothing comes together coherently. I think you could take away most of these costumes and the game wouldn't lose much, which just begs the question of why are a lot of them even here? Because the levels aren't really designed around them. You can basically get through a level by hogging one costume the majority of the time. And the levels are designed so weirdly too, you can literally just run in a straight line and go straight for the goal if you want to, but there's also a bunch of collectibles which you can explore for. And it's like the game doesn't quite know if it wants to be a collectathon or a straight linear platformer. The incentive to explore is just so strange. And there's one part too where you go up to Balan, and he takes you to this QuickTime event, and I didn't know what was going on the first time, because you're in this really rigid-looking world. You talk to this NPC, all of a sudden you're just taken away to some place between dimensions where you do these QuickTime events. I didn't know what was going on. You're dancing, you're attacking enemies, and then you're back without a word. It's just so jarring.
The thing is, are you even attacking enemies? It just looks like he's attacking nothing, and it's not even... it's given no context. You're just kind of like, hey, if you can use my power well, I'll reward you, and you get like gems and stuff. But it's like, well, why is he attacking this stuff? A lot of the time it just seems, I just don't understand, and he's just in this featureless void, just streaming through, and it's not even like the QuickTime events are difficult. And also, QuickTime events, it's 2021. This entire game feels so old, and not in a kind of a fun retro way, but in a kind of a stumbling growing pains kind of way.
I play a lot of older platformers, and I have fun with them. I had no fun with this. There's points where you're locked into a combat arena, and your attacks feel so stilted against enemies. Like, I think at one point I had the wolf costume on, and you just kind of spin into an enemy. It's like you're jumping on them, basically. But the weirdest thing is the camera locks on automatically, sometimes. Other times you've got to control it yourself. And so there's this weird struggle almost, where sometimes the camera's locking on, other times you're controlling it yourself, and you can do both at the same time. And I rarely know when it's going to lock on, because there's no like indication that it's locked on. I just don't understand a lot of the mechanics of this game.
And can we talk about how the camera control feels terrible? Like, it's kind of, I don't fully know how to describe it. It's not smooth. It's also not really responsive. It's just kind of, it's just kind of, I'm going to pick up the controller again whilst we're recording, because I've still got the game running. And yeah, it kind of feels slow and unresponsive, but at the same time difficult to control because it's a bit twitchy. And there's bounce to it as well sometimes. It constantly wants to reset your position, your camera position, so that you're looking at things, I suppose, for lack of a better term, properly. But it just doesn't work.
No, at the start of the first level, there's this staircase you have to jump up, and with every jump, the camera kind of, like you say, it kind of bounces. It resets itself with each time, so there's this weird judder to the camera with every jump, and that's your first impression of the jump mechanic. It's just this weird juddery camera.
Can we also talk about I realise that we don't seem to be sort of sticking on any one subject for too long, but there is so much to talk about. The run animation is terrible. Like,
it's so bad.
Why is it so exaggerated? Why are they just like, I'm going on a mission, I've got something to do. Well, I'm in Balan Wonderworld, baby. Just running along.
I think that would be fine. That would be fine if you moved at a good speed.
But you don't.
So you're really slow, and you're marching along like you're the fastest thing in the world, and it looks so weird.
It's like a child has seen an episode of Sonic X and is going, I'm Sonic the Hedgehog, and running around. And oh god, I when we started recording this video, I was hoping that I'd be able to sort of like maybe not be too mean about it, but it's difficult not to criticize this game.
Yeah, you've got to be. I was excited for this. When it was revealed, I thought, there aren't many games like this anymore.
Yeah.
I miss this imaginative 3D platformer. We just don't really get these. And so I wanted to go in with an open mind. And I tried to, but the impressions right off the bat are just so negative. And it's not like this is a short demo that doesn't give you enough time to fully understand what the game is. This is a beefy thing. As you said, Alex, you played for 90 minutes.
Yeah,
that's way.
I'm fairly certain I haven't done everything even.
So there's a lot of content in this game. They really want you to get a taste for how bad it really is. And if I were them, I just wouldn't have done a demo.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, in a way, props to them for putting a demo out so that people can see what the game is like, but it does feel, and contrary to their own interests. And there's one other thing. I only noticed this in the first world, in like Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, for lack of a better term. But there's this weird thing going on with perspective, like geometry that's far away from you seems to twist and warp, but not always. When you first enter the level, the geometry and everything is stable. It just stays still, regardless of the giant, terrifying farmer. You go in and then you go like through the first door or something, and then all of a sudden everything starts twisting and it looks like an error, but it must be intentional. I just don't understand it. The design document for this game must have been, well, it must have just been terrifying.
I bet Square regret this. They'll pitch a Yuji Naka game, and it does look imaginative when you look at screenshots or trailers out of context. But when you're playing it, I don't know. It just doesn't find its groove. I don't think it ever really had an idea of what it really wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah, it's messy, isn't it? It's messy, unfinished, and I've just reached. Sorry, I'm playing as we record because I'm just trying to remind myself I don't want to forget things. And there are these like mirrors, I suppose, for lack of a better term, that you go through, which essentially function like portals. Let's not split hairs. And they run at a terrible frame rate, like really terrible. And it's meant to, yeah, I get it, sort of it's meant to shift its perspective as though you're looking through a portal into another area of the world. But the thing is, it's locked onto the position of the character, which means that, your camera's essentially staying still and your character's moving back and forward. And it's kind of changing the perspective as though that's what the character can see, but you're not looking through the character's eyes. So it's weirdly jarring and it's low frame rate. It's like Portal back in 2005 was Portal? Something like that? No, it was a bit later than that.
It's like 2007, I think.
2007. Either way, sort of a long bloomin' time ago. They got that down. They got that technology down pretty much perfectly, and it was astonishing back in the day. And this is just like you can literally copy Portal, and it's a minor thing, I know, but it's just so jarring. There's so much about this game that's so jarring. I've just seen the dancing animals again. Why are they dancing, John? Why don't they stop?
I do not know. And I think you're right to kind of fixate on the small things, because there's so many smaller things, and none of them come together at all. Like, basic game design is to iterate upon simple mechanics and then elaborate further. And they don't do that. They just keep throwing more and more weird small things at you until the level's over. And it never makes any sense. It never just comes together and gives you a grander thing. And it just feels like they didn't really know what they were going for with this. And yeah, I'm interested to see what the full game is going to be like. I don't think they're going to fix anything. I think that, but maybe as the game goes on, maybe it finds its identity a bit more. I doubt it, but just the pure gameplay mechanics to me feel flawed.
Yeah. Oh, I also absolutely, the trophies are kind of like, for lack of a better term, the stars in the game. Mm-hmm. I absolutely cheesed one of them. I did not have the costume, or maybe I did, but I didn't realize you could swap between them at the time, because I'm fairly certain the game doesn't tell you can swap costumes.
I don't think it does.
No. And so I didn't have the costume, or I didn't know I had the costume. I just completely cheesed one of them. I basically just went around because the platform's collision is it's very inaccurate. So as a result, I was just able to just completely go around something and just bypass an obstacle entirely. I mean, you could argue that maybe it was designed that way so that you could use multiple different costumes, but it didn't feel intentional, I've got to admit. I tell you what, I do like the Tims, though. The little birdie things that follow you around, they are adorable, objectively.
I suppose there's the kind of harden back to chows in a way. Like, you go to the hub world and you can feed them, and that's kind of nice.
What does that do, though?
I don't know.
No, it doesn't explain it, does it?
You can feed them a bunch of gems. I don't know what it does.
I thought maybe that there's this thing in the center called the Tower of Tims. And I thought that maybe feeding them causes that number to go up, or maybe, it causes them to have babies, and, it's the number of Tims you have. I have no idea what it is that actually causes the Tower of Tims to rise, but I got it up to maximum just by standing near the counter. The Tims would spawn on this weird spinning wheel thing, and the number would go up. And that was it. And I've fully completed the Tower of Tims just by... I've not even been doing anything. I've just left the game running, and I completed the Tower of Tims. And it's not a small number either. When I first went back into the overworld, the counter said 10 or something. And it's like, okay, so, am I going to have to feed a load of these things or what? I don't know. I don't know. I still don't know. There's just this tower, and I've reached 500. And it's just...
That just kind of says it all, that just this thing isn't explained. You don't know what it does. And honestly, I don't feel like Yuji Naka has lost his touch. I just feel like this was a very poorly managed project.
Yeah.
Clearly a lot of money went into the CG animations. They look good. They definitely do. Which makes it look all the more jarring when you go from that to gameplay. And I hope that the industry still gives Yuji Naka opportunities, because he deserves them. Just this is a very poor reflection of what he can do.
Yeah, do you know what? In a weird way, it does. I've seen other people describe it as being very similar to a Sonic Team game. This kind of feels like, in theory, Sonic Team at its worst.
It has the aesthetics of a Sonic Team game. I don't feel like a Sonic Team game has ever controlled this poorly, though.
No, like I've recently went back and had a go at Billy Hatcher just because I thought I might as well have a laugh. And that game isn't perfect by any means, but it's at least really fun to control. And you can get speed and momentum, and you roll on the egg and stuff like that, and you can do some pretty crazy things with the movement. There's nothing like that here. There's no freedom in the movement. It is stiff, it is stilted, and it is boring. It's just boring.
Again, that's the thing. Like Sonic Forces, like the game design is boring, sure, but mechanically it's all right. Whereas this is not only average in terms of game design, it's just boring in terms of how you play it.
I just think that the entire game, it feels like they had an idea. It wasn't fully developed, but they still went gung-ho into it. I don't know whether maybe there was, sort of an expectation from Square Enix or someone along the way to just get the game done, even though, it's possible that at some point they realized that it just wasn't quite working how they expected. I don't know, but there's clearly something funny going on here. I also have a feeling that this was originally intended to be a mobile game. If I'm being... No, and I know that sounds like I'm just trying to be rude, but I genuinely believe it. There is one action button. One! You've got 4 buttons, they all do the same thing. The only other control is changing costumes. And those are using big, big icons at the top. Make them a tiny bit bigger, stick them on a touch screen, you've got touch controls. And that would explain the stiff movement as well.
Not to get too conspiracy, but it feels like how the game works, it would lend itself pretty well to touchscreens. Because it's so slow and stilted, that kind of slow momentum and jump would work pretty well for that.
Absolutely, yeah. And did you ever come across these weird, floating... They look like snitches from Harry Potter's Quidditch thing. And you jump underneath them. It's basically like a multi-coin block. Did you ever come across those?
Yeah, my first one, I didn't know what it was, and then I accidentally broke one later on. I was like, oh, that's what it is. But again, it's one of those things that isn't explained. I jumped into it, nothing happened, so I went on. Then later on, I accidentally broke one.
I just didn't know whether you pressed it rapidly, super rapidly. It completely breaks. You don't actually land on the floor again. So you're just there underneath, kind of floating, constantly. I don't know whether that was intentional or not, maybe, but it doesn't look intentional. And why do the keys constantly respawn? And why do you need keys for the power-ups? And why are the invulnerability frames so long? You have so many invulnerability frames after taking damage. So many.
Yeah, I do not know. Once you've got the power-up, just keep it there. There's no need to keep resetting the key and make you unlock it again. I do not understand.
Well, I think it's because when you take damage, you lose the costume. Which didn't happen often, not gonna lie. So it's kind of like a health meter as well, which isn't a terrible idea, but when the levels are actively designed around these costumes, you kind of need a reliable way to get those back again. It's not the design philosophy is kind of the opposite of all the Mario games. You don't need the power-ups in order to complete the levels, ever, I believe. Do you?
I can't think of any.
No.
And if in the rare instance that you do, they usually have one right next to you. So say you're in Mario Galaxy 2 and you've got to get a balloon Yoshi to climb up a tree. There's always another power-up to respawn there. And it's so simple to do that, whereas this is not the case here. It may sound like we're being needlessly negative about this game. Just try the demo yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. It's free. Go and download it. Give it a go. It doesn't take long to download. Try it for yourself. And if you find worth in it and you enjoy it, then I don't have any arguments against that because, our opinion isn't the only one. If you can enjoy this game, then seriously, more power to you. That's That's great that you can find a game that you really enjoy. And it's a meaty demo. So if you enjoy it, you've got, a good kind of like big chunk of free gameplay. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. But, maybe try the demo before you buy it. Let's just say that. Like, did you do the first world's boss?
I did.
What was it meant to be challenging? Was it meant to be anything?
I don't know. I mean, he just sort of jumps around, and then you jump into him, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
Sometimes he jumps up on a platform like Chaos Zero in Sonic Adventure, and then he comes down again, and then you hit him.
Yeah,
that's it.
That was it. It was just kind of, and I hit him. I thought I hit him twice, but I'm guessing I must have hit him 3 times. And I took some damage because I was fairly certain you have to use the wolf power-up there. The wolf power-up, the attack sends you upwards as well, because it's a jump and an attack. But it has extremely short range. It is just your hurt box or hit box, whatever. And as a result, you have to get up ridiculously close before you can activate it, meaning the likelihood that you're going to take damage is not guaranteed, but it's very high. Like, why does it not send out a, sort of like an attack hitbox that's a little bit bigger? Or if it does, why doesn't it telegraph that? Like, there's just so many things about this game that feel like, I don't know, they just didn't go through proper standard game design. Was this game play tested properly, or has it been rushed to the point that it hasn't been effectively play tested? I don't want to make any assumptions, but it's just so much wrong with it. There's just so much wrong with it.
I thought that boss was going to be a puzzle as well, because he jumps up onto a pillar, which is so similar mechanically to the one from the prior level. So there's one costume where you jump up and you slam down, which makes the pillar go up, which is very similar to another mechanic from Mario Odyssey, by the way. And this boss has that very same pillar, but you don't use that mechanic. All he does is jump up on there. So I was just wondering, like, why is that even there? So I looked at that and I thought, I know how to beat this guy.
You can, for lack of a better term, ground pound on him with that costume. Well, not on him, sorry, on one of the other pillars, and it damages him, it sends him up, yeah.
It's just bizarre that you can do that, but also they have another route in there too. I don't know why they just keep juggling all these different ideas.
I suppose you could argue that it's to sort of add flexibility and allow you to complete levels in any way you see fit. But it doesn't really... It kind of flirts with that idea, but it's like, hey, you have 2 strict options. Rather than allowing any kind of freedom or creativity, it limits you to a few things. It just... I don't know. It feels like it's trying to be too many things at once. Far too many things at once. And not doing any of them to any sort of good, positive degree.
Yeah, that basically summarizes it. I do hope that when this game comes out, it's miraculously okay, but I have severe doubts.
Yeah, I just can't see how they're going to make it, how they're going to fix it, because there's so much wrong with it, and moreover the game it's ugly, isn't it? Like, it doesn't look good. A lot of the NPCs are very low poly, and I think I've got a feeling maybe that's part of the reason why they just disappear when you get nearby. It's not well optimized. It doesn't run well. The frame rate's not stable. I just don't think there's anything. I want this game to be salvageable. I just think that there's far too much wrong with it. It needs another year in development, I think.
And it's out in a month, 2 months. There's very little they can do at this point.
Well, on that note, it's not fun. It's not fun to talk about games like this, because I wouldn't say I was like mega looking forward to this game, but I was interested in it at the very least. And now I just sort of feel deflated. It's, the kind of sort of classic 3D platformer, because it does feel like a GameCube game, but for all the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm. But if you do want a good Yuji Naka game, I say good, an interesting Yuji Naka game, the Wii version of Rodea is actually pretty cool and seems to go under the radar quite a lot.
Yeah, I can't. Really didn't like Rodea the Sky Warrior, but yeah, no, do give it a look in. If John likes it, it can't be all bad.
Don't play the Wii U version though.
Oh, that's the one I've got.
Yeah, the Wii one, they're very different games.
Why?
The Wii U one, for some reason, was done by a different developer.
What? I'm so confused. I think we're going to have to wrap things up there. Do download the demo, give it a go, make your own assessment, and let us know what you think in the comments down below. Why not? But that's all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you wear that subscribe button as a costume and remove your ability to breathe, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.